Hello, it's me again, and here with my latest release, which I took a lot of time to find time to make the video showcasing this mod. Um, as I stated on my previous release, the air-cooled Gauls, the GT wasn't in the pack. That was because I was updating its pack on the repository, and it's been out for 2 weeks now. But I'm gonna make this video anyways to show you guys that are not in like following my project so closely. So yeah, here's the pack with the Gaul GT, and of course, me being me, it's not only the Gaul GT, it's all of the versions of the Gaul GT, all the changes year by year that this car received, which were quite well. Looking them from 20 feet, you're not gonna notice anything. Looking them close, you're gonna notice. So let's get it straight into the meat and potatoes. In front of you is a 1984 Gaul GT. To understand why this car exists, you got to go back into my video of the air-cooled Gaul, but if you don't want to go, I will explain it here. When a Gaul was launched, it was launched with a 1.3-liter boxer engine from the Beetle air-cooled, mounted up front. The car with that engine wasn't a sales disaster. It sold 30,000 units in its first year, which for a closed Brazilian market wasn't that bad, but Volkswagen was estimating it was going to sell 50,000 cars, and the Gull did way below that. The car got an image of being kind of underpowered, a bit of a letdown for the Brazilian public that was expecting a replacement for the Beetle, but not with the same engine as the Beetle. Uh, in fact, the Gull created a problem that Volkswagen made its own factory for the Gull, and when the Gulf started going badly, the dealership stopped ordering the car because they had a backlog of Gulls and said, "Don't send us Gulls, send us Bugs, send us Brazilias, Passats," and so Volkswagen dropped the production for the Gulf factory way to the floor and fired off 5,000 workers from that. Um, well, that wouldn't seem a problem for everybody. It seemed a problem just for Volkswagen. The problem is Volkswagen in the late 70s and early 80s in Brazil, they had 50% of the market. There, you had four brands that were operating here in Brazil. You had Volkswagen, General Motors, Ford, and Fiat. Volkswagen had 50% of the market. Those other three were fighting for the other 50%. And when people heard there were like 5,000 workers laid off from Volkswagen because the Gol wasn't selling, they didn't associate it with that problem that was because the Gol wasn't selling. They associated that problem that the entire Brazilian automobile industry was in trouble. So Volkswagen had to act really fast, and as a stopgap solution, they made the 1.6-liter Golf, the boxer engine, which is what I have, and that kind of like brought sales up to what Volkswagen was expecting, but the Gol was still not going as strongly as they wanted. So there were already talks to launching this car with the water cooled engine since it was launched, but Volkswagen, there was the part of the group developing the Gol that was like there were the German part of the group that wanted to launch this car with the air cooled engine, and they had more power because they were associated with the German part of Volkswagen. They had more power of the Brazilian part, and after the Gol tanked so badly in sales, they launched the sedan and the wagon version of the Gol with the water-cooled engine, the Voyage and the Paraty, which you guys in America got as a Fox and Volkswagen. Those cars went really well, and so those guys that wanted the car with the water-cooled engine started gaining traction, and in 1983, Ford launched the Escort, which was a direct competitor to the Gol, and with it brought from Europe, even though didn't have the engine it had in Europe, they brought out the XR3. They had the same version. Well, again, getting a bit into the history, Ford was using a version of the Renault 12 engine here. They didn't use European engines, which was a fair little engine. Could even be compared to the air-cooled engine, a bit better. Um, so Ford launched the Escort XR3 with that engine with some modifications, made around 82 horsepower. For Brazil at the time, it was a considerable amount of power, and the Gol sales tanked after the Escort sales came out. It was a as modern design as the Gol, but with an up-to-date powertrain and up-to-date performance. Volkswagen had to do something. The Gol was their entry-level car. It was the car that they were banking to replace the aging Beetle that was already dropping on sales. Last year, the Beetle was the best-selling car in Brazil, was 80 or 81. And after that, Volkswagen lost their sales leadership. They were still the company that had the most volume, out like spreading out to all their models, but they didn't have a best-selling car um, during that period. So to help with that, um, the Volkswagen CEO in Brazil said to the developing team they could do anything to save the Gol. They could spend as much money developing this thing as they wanted. And what did we do? We developed a Brazilian version of the Golf GTI. So the first Golf GT had a 1.8 liter engine, 8 valve that was carbureted, with a pretty decent carburetor for the time, 4-speed transmission. It had around 99 horsepower declared. It was, people say it was 110. It was more like 90, but it was very fast car and completely outperformed the Escort. Well, let's walk around and see all the changes that they did. Starting out up front, you have the front end treatment from the Voyage and the Parati, the wagon and this sedan car. So you have gone are the blinkers on the bumper. They're now wider and up here on the fenders. You have wider headlights. For the GT, you have a color matched grille. On 84 top fog lights. After this, they would have bottom fog lights too. You also have a front spoiler. You have the same wheels, same 14-inch rims from the Golf GTI in the United States, the Rabbit GTI. You have the thicker plastic body molding. Now again, and this is a pretty modern thing for Brazil in the 80s. Most Golfs at the time had the little thin chrome strip up in the door of 70s thing. So this car, as you can see, like it's really an 80s car. It doesn't have that 70s vibe the other Golfs had. GT 1.8 call out on the side of the car. You have the black body thing. Oh my god, the black trim on the back of the car here. Just like the LS, you have the black plate holder. You have the Cadron exhaust. Now this is a Brazilian product, and it's actually a pretty cool thing. Volkswagen wanted to give this car the image of a sporty car, so Brazil at the time had a law that limited to a certain amount of decibels the amount of noise a car can make. This exhaust was engineered to be right at the edge of the limit, so it was as loud as it could get, which for a factory car, even for a Volkswagen, was a pretty radical thing. Rear wiper. This car is completely loaded. The GT had all of the optionals that you could get on the Gol, and the water cooled engine. So this example, uh, it's one of the first examples. This has the MD engine. We called it the MD. Was the early version of the A27 engine. Uses a mini progressive carb, mini progressivo, which was the earlier carb from the Voyage and the Parati. Later on, it would get the 2E carburetor, which is a legendary carburetor in Brazil. Everything uses the 2E. Even GM started using the 2E later on. It's, you got turbo kits that will bolt straight onto a 2E with the A27 engine. It's one of the most popular things here in Brazil. And the real changes come inside. So right out of the bat, just looking from the outside, you can see we have Recaro seats, and they're actually thicker than the European Recaro seats. Going into the car, you have a red back, well, orange, some are yellow. I'm gonna get into the dashes later on. It's kind of a mess. So you have different dash with TAC, 190 kilometer speedometer, econometer, temperature gauge because this car is now water cooled, and a fuel. Oh my god, fuel gauge. Sorry for that. I'm kind of late in doing this video. um, Coming down here, another piece of Brazilian legislation that I touched on, the Copa, you had to have the gear pattern. So here on your digital chrono clock, which Volkswagen now advertised as an inboard computer, go figure. Yeah, The Gall, compared to the XR3, is a kind of a Spartan car. This car wasn't about luxury like the XR3. This car was about going fast. And for the time, for Brazil at the 80s, that's what it did. So, enough rambling. Let's fire this thing up and go for a drive. And just before I fire this up, I want to say this is the most accurate engine sound for a replica that I have ever made in automation. Right, so let's talk about the mechanical changes this car had. Starting off, as you can see, steering wheel from the Passat TS give you more accurate steering, smaller diameter steering wheel, which created a problem. As you can see, you can't really see the tach and the econometer, kind of cuts off the gauges. The Gall had the front struts from the Santana, which was a larger car. So you had stiffer suspension, stiffer sway bars. You have different. Oh, actually, nothing changed in the rear. You can see roll holding way better. You have 185 tires on 14-inch rims. Yeah, and just this car, like compared to the other Volkswagens that were on sale, the air-cooled products, this thing was just a giant leap. Volkswagen went from having one of the slowest cars on its class with the Gall to having the fastest car in its class. Expect around 170, 180 kilometers an hour for top speed. These cars didn't have the best drag coefficient, as you can probably imagine. The little flying brick that is. But again, in the world that was populated by 50 horsepower cars, you had a car that had almost double the horsepower of anything on the road. So, same thing in the world of guns. In World War II, most countries have bolt actions. If you had a semi-automatic, you're a king. In the world of 50 horsepower cars, you have 100, you're king of the road. Again, the handling on this car, it grips and grips and grips. I've actually taken this thing around Nürburgring and compared it to a Mark 1 GTI game, and this car just lacks a bit of power. Like if it had a bit more power, the same power as a GTI, this has the better chassis. This has the better handling. This has the better suspension. Again, as Modern Tree said, this thing, they said this thing was the best thing ever built in Brazilian land, Brazilian soil at that point. Quattro Rodas said this car was on par with European cars, which I agree with. Stop here at the gas station up next, and let's talk about the next car on the back, which is also an 84 GT, but with already some changes, which made the car even better. Right. As I stated, this car has the mini progressive carburetor and the MD engine. In the end of '84, they introduced the 2E carburetor and the AP engine, the legendary AP engine. The it's the Brazilian LS. It's simple as that. It's the Brazilian LS. It's one of the most popular modified engines you could find in Brazil at the time. Well, at the time and now. So, here it is. Still 4-speed car, and this car already has some changes for the dash. For some reason, Volkswagen decided to move the gear pattern up to the dash because I think they were thinking on removing this one down here. Problem is, some cars didn't, and they came out with this redundancy. Anyways, and also if you're wondering, the little yellow dot here, that is a shift light. Again, AP engine, you have a bit less low end torque than the MD, but you have more high end power. The change from the MD to the AP was the rod ratio. So the MD had a rod ratio above 0.3, I think that's the 3 or 0.3. It had a rod ratio above that, so in higher RPMs the engine was very rough and didn't perform well. With the AP, they widened the connecting rods, so it had the lower rod ratio, which gave it a bit of a revvier performance. See, 160 here, have one straight 170, no problem whatsoever. I did model all the radiators in this car accordingly, so they generally don't overheat. They're pretty reliable of overheating. If you do, you know, just abuse the crap out of it in a hot map like Utah, it will overheat eventually. These cars, they have a very small radiator. They are actually, the radiator in these cars only come to like, they're behind the headlight. They only come out to about here, and they have an overpowered fan to compensate, but still a bit lacking. The famous Tornado Red. Most of the GTs you're gonna find out there are gonna be this color. White was an 84 only color. The GT always had some year only colors. And we'll get into that with the next car. The next car in the pack is the 85. And this is actually a pretty, this config that I made is close to a car that my family owned for a bit, and the car that was the first manual car that I ever drove on the road. And it has, just like the car we owned, it has a very rare accessory. So again, this is a 1985, and this is one of the 1985 only colors, which is the champagne metallic beige. Beige on a sports car, you might think, it's ugly. I think it's quite an elegant car. You know, the Gol GT was a very expensive car for Brazil. Very expensive. Like, you needed a load of money to buy these. So a lot of people bought them for a status symbol. And a color like this really states that. So again, 1985, you have a lot of changes for the Gol. So the like the Gol in general, even the air-cooled ones. So the plugs here for the drains are now gone. It's a welded sheet of metal. The grill now is open on both sides here to allow better airflow. You have now bottom fog lights. On the interior, you have new door cards with shoulder rests, new door handles. On the GT now, the gauges, the speedometer goes up to 220 kilometers. The gauge font is now changed, and as you can see, this is where the variation starts. So you're gonna see these dashes with red, with white needles, red with orange needles. Like this one, you're gonna see them orange with white needles, and you're gonna see them yellow with white needles, and you're gonna find all those dashes along all the cars that I made. Also, again, going back to the first video that I made on these cars, the Pro Alcohol, the cars running on 100% ethanol in Brazil, was on its full swing in '85. So this car is running on ethanol. And the rare optional that I said it is the color and air conditioning. This here was seen by the Gol community in Brazil as a myth. So like, even some people think it's still a myth. It isn't. If you get the owner's manual for your Gol GT, the car on the manual has air conditioning. It's certainly not common though. It was very rare because this was a very, but very expensive item. And in Brazil, people like even though it was a hot tropical country, people said I don't want air conditioning. It'll give me a cold. So a lot of people didn't get the air conditioning, and because air conditioning systems rob a bit of power, and people were buying these cars, to street race them. So they just said, I'm not gonna get the air conditioning. It's just robbing me of power. Another thing here, again, new dome light for the Gol. Gone is the Beetle style dome light. All the GTs have this style of headliner, and it's specific to the GT. You have speakers on the back of the trunk. You have a new trunk privacy cover for the 85 line, and yeah, that is about it. Oh, also, and finally, 5-speed gearbox. Some some late '84 cars had the 5-speed, and in 1985 it became a standard item, which really wakened these cars up. The AP engine running on ethanol with the 5-speed is a blast to drive. Very close ratios for the 5-speed. Made this car kind of buzzy on the highway, but for sporting purposes, it's nice. I don't think it's the same gear ratios on the Mark 1 Golf GTI. No, they're a bit different. Same skirt though, same thing. The Gol, it's a thing that you really don't notice in the air-cooled cars because the engines are lighter and they have less power. The Gol is it handles like you're holding a sledgehammer. Like, the rear end is very light. You have a lot of weight in front of the front axle, so it will get kind of sideways if you provoke it. And if you don't provoke it, it has kind of turbo understeer. Okay, on to the next car, which I'm just going to gloss over because it's pretty similar to this one. The 1985 car on the classic Tornado Red. I made a red version of all the cars because it's the color that's most common. This thing is the same as the car was driving right now, but it's running on gasoline, so a bit weaker engine, not that much. It's like about 2 horsepower difference. And again, the thing I was talking about the dashes. So this one has a red dash with white needles. Right, on to the last year of the Gol GT. 1986. And let's drive a gasoline car just for comparison. And because this is the rare color for 86, which was black. Right, so what changed for 86? Mechanically, nothing. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Cosmetically, though, it has a new digital clock. So, although it only has 3 buttons, it has more functionalities in real life. And it has the classic Volkswagen wheel that you would find on Golf GTIs and all that stuff. This wheel was brought to try to fix a bit of the visualizing problem with the gauges. Helped a bit, not that much. Curious thing, black cars. All the Gol GTs have color matched the grills. Oh, but the black cars don't have painted grills. They have the standard plastic grill you would find on any other lower spec Volkswagen. Again, as you can see, econometer works. I'm with the wheel now, so you can actually see it working. Fourth gear right now. Put it in third. My foot down, it really goes down. Off. And it's not reading throttle position as you may think. It's actually reading engine load. So if I clutch in, as you can see, it's gonna go to the middle, but it goes up a bit, so it's not throttle. Do a bit of a standing start here. Scrub to the second. Bit of a swerve in third. You can really get this thing moving. It does get kind of floaty up in high speeds on rough roads. It's pretty average 205 numbers all the time. But yeah, just a very grounded car for what it is. And yeah, that is the Gol GT pack. As always, download link down in the description for you guys to enjoy this piece of Brazilian history. And you know, this is the car that saved the Gol, which went on to become the best-selling car in Brazil for 27 years. So it's a car of like historical importance for Brazil. Yeah, thanks for watching. And oh, before I go, I'm going to announce that I am going to be doing all of the cars in the Gol lineup up to 1994. You know, so I can keep this project working, because you know I pay a lot for a lot of these models and stuff, and you know I do a lot of research and thing, and I think it's worth it. I am thinking on opening a Patreon and asking like for a symbolic price, like you know $2 for the cars, just so I can keep this project going with the level of quality that I want to give these projects, because and it takes some resources, especially when you're doing cars that are kind of obscure and you don't have a lot of material on the internet to do them. So yeah, thanks for watching. This one, it's free for you to download. The link is in the description, and see you guys next time.